DoneJS underneath. If you want one, the really nice stretchy fabric, just follow DoneJS on Twitter or star us on GitHub. And if you don't even want to do that, you can still get one. Just promise to really listen intently when I'm talking up here. But if you want them, they're right up there. Just please follow. Thank you. Has anybody been to the Chicago JavaScript meetup? No? Well, hello. I'm from the Chicago JavaScript meetup. Nice to meet you, Madison folks. I'm one of the core organizers. Cool.
How many people do you have in that meetup?
On the email list, is that
Like in meetup.com?
there's I think a little over 3,000 on the meetup email list, and we get about 90, I would say. I don't really run it. That's not due to me. It's due to a guy named Justin Love who runs it. He does manages all the speakers, things like that. Cool. No one's gonna be that first brave soul to take a t-shirt?
I just did.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Nice to meet you. Sorry.
I'll take a t-shirt too.
And if anybody's a small, I do have smalls. I just left them in my car. Just let me know, and I'll sprint out of here right after or come back. My car's pretty close.
Okay, looks like we're getting people.
So you can help us out, or we need.
As long if you follow DoneJS on Twitter or star us, it's like when people are like suggested donation. It's kind of like that.
It's a social donation.
What if I promise to do it when I get home?
That's fine.
Okay.
I promise.
I do run the Twitter account, so I see everybody who follows.
Fair enough.
I'm busy studying my favorite food, so.
Yeah, really. I'm busy going from a X to a double X.
Pizza doesn't help.
Thank you.
All right. So I think we can go ahead and start.
Yep, I started.
You got it recorded already?
Everything, and then we'll stop it and restart it when you're ready to talk. This way we'll get a clean slate.
Cool.
So
All right. Welcome everybody to MadJS 2016, first event of the year. So the prior organizer, Eric, now lives in Chicago. He stepped down from being the organizer officially for the meetup. We do have people, me, I'm a co-organizer, Hani is a co-organizer, Josh is, I guess, I don't know why we have different roles, but we can change them up, of course. But we have Josh and Perry as well. Is Josh, Perry? Oh, there you are. So if you're interested in helping organize, please contact us. We do have some other cleanup to think through too. There's this guy Gary, who lives in New York, who became an organizer. I don't know how that happened. Does anybody actually know?
Well, you can sign up for any group from anywhere.
I guess so. He signed up 2 days ago, and I don't know what's going on there. So we're gonna have to clean that up. I guess after this meeting, we'll figure it out, or an email or whatever. But anyway, so if you're interested in helping with MadJS, or if you have a presentation you want to give, it's a very open group, very easy to do. Usually about an hour, going over whatever JavaScript related topic that you're interested in, or CoffeeScript related topic. So more than welcome to do that. Just send a message on meetup.com, and one of us will answer and get you scheduled up. Let's see. Every month we record the meetups. Hani does the recordings and gets them out onto YouTube. We have about 2.5 years, two-ish years of Meetup's recorded now. It's a really valuable resource. You can just go onto YouTube and look up MadJS meetups and find past presentations. And this one will be up there in about 2 weeks or so. And thank you, Honey, for doing that. It's really useful. We do have T-shirts that are out on screen.com. We do have a website as well. It also, on the website, we have our code of conduct and links to past meetups, things like that. So that's about it. And before we go into the presentation about DoneJS, Justin's going to be doing the presentation. Do want to thank Bitovi, which is where Justin works, I guess. His company sponsored the pizza, so that's really nice.
Thank you.
Always good to actually have pizza. So I'm going to open up to announcements. Anybody have any job openings or things of interest related to our technology domain?
We have another Node School happening next month. So that's February 10th. So that's the announcement today. So if you guys want to know, we're doing it bi-monthly.
Yep, cool.
How was the first one?
Exceeded my expectations. So I think we had close to 60 people here.
Yeah.
Ran out of power cords. We'll make sure we have that covered next time.
Are you going to continue from where we left off? I mean, most people did 6 or 7 exercises. So
I am. I'm going to continue with Learn New Node, and then there's another one after that. So I'm hoping to do 2 at a time so we can have continuation every 2 months.
Yeah, I found it useful. I think people did too. I think it went very, very successfully. And there are people who are, have more experience and they can help the people. Like if you're a novice, just join in because Node School is quite easy to get into JavaScript development for the server. So I definitely recommend it to anybody. And there's, it's very open. It's free too. It's absolutely 100% free. So, you can't beat that. So it'll be in that room, or
It's actually going to be in
this room. So you also know where it is. So yeah, definitely come. Definitely worth your while. So, any other announcements? Job openings? Comments? Suggestions? Okay. With that, then, I'm just going to hand it over to Justin, and he'll talk about DoneJS.
So just out of curiosity, this being a college town, how many people are like college students here? Is there anybody? Or is it all just professional programmers for the most part? Just one person living the dream still. Nice.
Well, I actually work full time as well.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's tough. All right. Well, I'm actually kind of curious if this passed. Damn it. All right. Let me get my presentation. And all right. All good? You see it? Set up? All right, let's get started. So, hello everybody. Thanks for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed the pizza. So I get to say one little thing about Bitovi. We're a JavaScript consulting company. Not only do I work for them, I'm the small business owner of the company. So appreciate that pizza. No, I'm really happy to be here. I always like coming to Madison. I went to Champaign, but a lot of my friends went here, and I don't know, fun school. So I'm going to be talking about DoneJS. So I'll talk about Toby's relationship to that in a second. But it's a new JavaScript framework. I'm going to be going over why I think you should use it and talk about, or give an example of using it to build a real-time chat application. My job here, obviously, is to sell a little bit of DoneJS. So if you don't feel the pressing need when we're done today to run home and rewrite all your React and Angular code in DoneJS, I haven't done my job. And I want to learn how to do a good job. So if you have questions, I mean, it's
Probably your
really? All right,
Attention please, the kitchen crew is continuing its cooking show recording. Parents and kids come down to the bubbler. They're video recording for the next half hour.
We'll edit that
yeah.
out.
So not as only is my job to get you to want to do DoneJS, it's to be more entertaining than the cooking class, which is a tall order, I'm sure. But because we're such a small group, please, ask me questions, challenge me, right? If you've got a question in the back of your mind, like, well, I don't like this, or how does this compare to this? Feel free to stop me. I like that. So, with that in mind, as I said, oh no, not quite yet. So I've given this a few times. I'm starting to hit the road talking about DoneJS. And I realize that everybody has those nagging questions in the back of their mind that they always ask at the end. So I'm going to try to answer them in the beginning. DoneJS is an open source JavaScript framework, MIT license purely for the front end, right? So it has back-end tools to do a build, do server-side rendering, but you can use it in .NET Stack or Python or Ruby on Rails. You just write your back-end services, and it runs on top of those. But it does run in Node if you want server-side rendering and the build tools. It's built on top of a lot of other JavaScript libraries, all of which can be used independently. People are working on to swap out the template engine that this comes with with React. So you can mix and match to some degree. It supports IE8 still, which is crazy. Works in all the different systems. Actually, Node 4 and Node 5 and NPM3 are supported, and I have to delete that. And then it's not a new framework. It's actually it's kind of rebuilt from JavaScript MVC. Has anybody heard of JavaScript MVC here? Yeah, all right, a few people. So JavaScript MVC was built by Bitovi 8 years ago, and for a lot of reasons, which are kind of fun to talk about over beers, we lost traction to a lot of the frameworks that came out. But we still, the whole time for the last 8 years, have been building towards this new framework, and it is DoneJS. And I'm going to go through a lot of the features when I build the chat application. But the real thing I want to talk about now is why we built it. We built it because we have a lot of big clients, right? We built Walmart's mobile store. We built Sam's Club's mobile store. We built another mobile store that I couldn't talk about, but we did it. And we learned, I've learned so much over the past 8 years of what it takes to build a real, scalable production application with 30 developers, 30 front-end developers, all running at the same time. So what we want to do is retool JavaScript MVC into DoneJS and kind of provide the next features we think are going to be important for the next five, hopefully 8 years. So what I'm going to show off today, kind of put a special emphasis on, is the real-time behavior, how it does data caching in the browser, has this fall-through local. It has a fall-through cache that hits local storage. I'm going to talk about how it does progressive loading, makes builds really nice, and deploys them to a CDN. I'm actually going to show a lot of this stuff. How it does server-side rendering, and kind of show off its hot module swapping. We're going to see all of this as I build the hello world of real-time applications, a simple chat application. And before I get into it, I do think DoneJS has a really nice performance story that I want to go into a little bit more in depth. And the way I'm going to do this is compare DoneJS, compare a traditionally single-page application, how one builds a traditional SPA app, with how DoneJS works. So this is kind of how a traditional single-page application looks. Right? You just send back your skeleton code, HTML, to the browser. JavaScript comes alive, loads, is loaded, and builds all of the templates and things like that. How many people have built like a single-page app like this that looks like this? So most people here. And when I say single page, I don't mean it looks like a single page or all in one page. It looks like you're going between different pages with push state or hash change routing, but it's still constructed as a single page application. So the problem with single page applications is the load time performance, right? What it takes to have a user go from hitting that URL to finally seeing a interactive, fully written out page, right? Because it takes a number of steps. I just realized I untied my shoe, and that's going to drive me crazy while I talk. All right, hold on. Sorry, I just cannot have that second thing in your mind the whole time, like you're going to trip and fall. Okay, so the problem with a traditional single-page application are these number of steps that I'm going to walk through. The first thing is the user goes to the page, hits enter in their URL, or clicks a link from somewhere else, and the server is going to respond with that blank HTML from the production or from the application server. And then JavaScript is going to start loading, and CSS, and you're going to probably end up downloading too much JavaScript and too slowly. Right? You download too much JavaScript because most of the time people package every single page's JavaScript in one big bundle, and all of the CSS in one big bundle. And at the end, if there's time, I'll talk about how most people are familiar that Webpack can kind of break things up, but we do it in a little bit better of a way, which I won't have details, but I can talk about at the end. But you tend to, people, when they first come to a project, are just setting it up to download too much. And they're also often, what they are downloading downloads too slow because they're downloading from the application server, not from a content delivery network. And if you're not familiar with what I mean by content delivery network, I mean, if my application is running in, let's say, San Francisco, instead of loading JavaScript files going all the way back to San Francisco to download those, I can go locally to Madison and download the files from there. The content delivery network will spread out your JavaScript and CSS files everywhere so that they download faster. But that can be tricky to set up. And then finally, once JavaScript has become alive, it needs to make more AJAX requests to typically get its data. And finally, once it gets its data, it shows the final result on the page. Now, DoneJS, we really strive to make a much better performance story out of the box, where you really don't have to do anything for you to get a single-page application to work how it should. So, DoneJS applications, when the user goes to that page, it will send back the server-side rendered HTML, and embedded in it the data that any AJAX request your client code is going to be making. It'll embed that data in the page response. So what the user sees very quickly is the fully rendered HTML. Then it starts downloading just the JavaScript that's needed for that page and just the CSS. So it downloads much quicker, and it also will download from a CDN very easily and very quickly, so you get much faster JavaScript instantiation times. And the data's already there, so it never needs to make AJAX requests to kind of actually get its data. So this is how DoneJS works. Any quick questions there? Yeah.
So you say it's a front-end only framework. How are you handling this on the back end to make sure that all that stuff is being
Yeah.
provided based on
So
the page.
you have a server-side rendering front-end server. So that is on the back end, but only the client runs in that front-end server. So all of your like RESTful services and things like that can run somewhere else. Good question. Anything else?
Does it know what kind of browser you have? I mean, as far as Modernizer or other?
So it does know, in the case of like old IE, it will embed HTML5 shiv, or HTML5 shiv, because it uses custom elements. So there is hooks where you can, if you have other things, but most of that kind of stuff, like Modernizer, a lot of that's done in the dependency management system and doesn't actually need to be done with, the server-side rendering. Cool. Okay. So in the end, it kind of looks like this in our experience in terms of the performance. Of course, you can send out that static HTML, that dumb HTML, faster. Then it takes time. Our server-side rendering is really fast. It's a single context. It runs in a single node context and can be like multiplex. So multiple pages can be, in one node process, can be serviced at one time. And for one actually piece of application code, it doesn't have to reload the entire application code too. So it can be ridiculously fast. But you're never going to be faster than just reading a file and spitting it out. But after that, the user will typically be able to see their fully rendered page, start thinking about what they're seeing, and before their mind is even made up and try to click on something, all JavaScript will have loaded and the page will be interactive. So it's a really good user experience. Okay, so now let's build the chat. So at this point, I really want to just show how easy it is to get like all of the good stuff for pretty much free. So this chat application is going to have two pages, a home page that has a link to a chat page. And we're going to show off a subset of those features. Again, we're going to set up server-side rendering, progressive loading, all of these things. We're going to see how the generators work, but that's not, to me, that's not as cool as some of the other stuff that's underlined. So it'll take 7 steps. We're going to set up DoneJS and a new project in DoneJS. We're going to add Bootstrap to this project and then check out hot module swapping. If you don't know what I mean by hot module swapping, it's not as nearly as sexy as it sounds. Actually, well, it is kind of. If you're me, I guess. It's basically, it's a way so that you don't have to ever hit refresh, but it's even faster than that because it doesn't do a full page refresh. It identifies the modules that have changed and only re-executes those and their parent modules. So you get lightning fast development experience. We'll also see server-side rendering that show that it's working. We'll add routing between two basic pages and then finish those pages, adding real-time behavior, and then we'll build and deploy this to production. And then there's an 8th special step that's going to be really cool. So stay tuned for that. So let's set up DoneJS project. What do you need to do? Well, that's kind of loud, my typing. You just, can I turn the volume down, I wonder? Nope. You just npm install DoneJS. If you're in Windows, to get npm installed correctly so it can do C builds, we have the instructions for that. It's a little trickier, but once you have Node installed, it's just as simple as installing DoneJS globally for its command line tools. And then once you've done that, this is going to be loud typing a lot, so I'm sorry for that. Here's a volume control.
It's probably on the wall.
Okay, sorry. Anyways, so I just created I created a folder, ran DoneJS and init, and it's asking me some questions to fill out my package.json, essentially. Oh, that's better, I think. Cool. So you fill out the questions, fills out your package.json, and then installs all of the dependencies. One thing I like about DoneJS is that its like command line tool is actually just dumb and just calls whatever project you have its underlying commands, actually. So that if you have one project in 0.6 version and another in 0.5, you could switch between them without having to reinstall your global DoneJS. If you ever build your own command line tools for Node, do that the same way. Okay. So I've created a new project, and then DoneJS comes with this development server, which is just a host of static files, does server-side rendering, and also sets up the hot module swapping. So just running DoneJS develop, and this also comes with a proxy, so you can proxy requests through it to your underlying APIs. But I'm not setting that up for this example. So it produces a server, and it just creates a dummy hello world page. So the next thing I'm going to do is add Bootstrap and kind of check out some of these, just to show off some of these kind of core essential features of the framework. So this is what the generator for the new application produced. Oh, I don't know if I need to be here to be like in frame. And you see this source folder. And really, the page that's being server-side rendered is this index.stash. And this is a handlebars-like template. And we're going to just change it to show off the server-side rendering is working. So as I add live reload, you'll note and save this file, you'll notice it just shows up on the right automatically. So now I want to add Bootstrap. And you'll notice these can imports. These are like our version of HTML imports that can actually import modules from HTML. So to add Bootstrap, I'm just going to install Bootstrap into my project with npm. And then I can just use those can imports. I can just use those can imports to import Bootstrap's less file. So Bootstrap less. And you'll notice I put a bang here. Anybody use System.js here? Or JSPM? That's the lower level. System.js is based on the ES6 module loader spec. We use that to do our build system, and it requires that you just, any special non-JavaScript file, you add that bang to. Oh, and then you might have missed it, but once I added Bootstrap, I added some actual HTML that uses it, and the hot module swapping just showed off the change there. So finally, I just want to show off the server-side rendering to show that this is actually being server-side rendered. So I'll open up DevTools, go to localhost, and you'll see at the bottom here. We're up there. You'll just see that says Hello World, just like we put in our template. Okay, so out of the gate we have server-side rendering and hot module swapping working. Next thing I'm going to do is add routing between two different pages. Well, any questions there before I move on? No? Okay, cool. Next thing I'm going to do is add routing between the home page. Oh, yeah.
I saw that you were actually loading the CSS there as well.
Yeah.
So the can import is actually pulling in part of Bootstrap's CSS into the HTML?
Yeah, well, so in development mode, there's a whole other talk we gave about this problem. In development mode, for hot module swapping to work with styles, you actually need to inline those styles, and for server-side rendering to work, you need to inline those styles, or else you get the flash of unstyled content. So only in development do we inline that Bootstrap generated less to CSS. And then development mode, it'll just be a link tag there. Or being in production, it'll just be a link tag there. Unless you want to, you can actually set it up so if you want to inline all your styles, in the page response, you can do that too. Good question. Very observant, though. No one has ever noticed that.
What server were you using to load the server side? Were you using Express? I wasn't paying attention.
So we have so the server-side rendering you can use it just programmatically through JavaScript. There's also, it's expressed as Express middleware. But in this case, we're using, we have that node development server is just like a little helper that you can actually use in a production environment, but most people will integrate it with other Node Express services if they're running in a Node environment. So that's what that is, I guess.
So it's Node plus some custom stuff that you've added to it?
Yeah, well, it's Node. It is Node. It's just we have some functionality that can load a virtual DOM plus the application. And how the server-side rendering works, this is kind of cool I'll try to explain it. Essentially, we load the application in the server. A new page request comes in. We create a brand new virtual DOM document, right? And these documents are virtual DOM. They're really, really fast. And we say, hey, this is your URL, and this is your session, and things like that. Go run your code until the document is fully finished. How do we know when the document is fully finished? We actually trap all asynchronous, any AJAX requests, any timeouts, and we can see when they're all done for a given realm of code running. Once they're all done, we know that the final HTML output is realized, and we ship that back to the client. So that's how it works. And it's called CanSSR. That's that piece of code that can take an incoming request, create a new document for it, run the code on it, and produce the result. And it can send it out through Express or whatever else.
Okay.
What about, so you talked about AJAX, what about WebSockets?
Yeah, it's got hooks in for as much. We use a WebSocket polyfill, and the WebSocket polyfill actually uses process or Nexttick or whatever, and we polyfilled those already. So we didn't actually have to, unless people are going to pull in some custom, C binding logic package into your project, we should be able to have hooks. And if you don't have hooks, you can always call pause and resume, so you can kind of manually tell it when it's done if you need to. But for the most part, it can trap most things. Good questions.
Just one more.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to wrap my head around, okay, with what you've shown so far, what's different about it from a normal Express app that has, the same templates and all that you're telling it on the back end? It seems exactly the same to me.
So when you go if you go from the home page here, that will be server-side rendered, but when you go to the next page,
Right.
JavaScript produces that full page result. So there is no other service requests except for those that actually have to hit your services. So then you get the benefits of the initial render coming from the server, but you can do all of your fun client-server separation, thin-server architecture type builds. And you're really just writing a client app for your full front end, if that makes sense. So you can actually use jQuery to move HTML elements around in the client, and the server-side rendering will handle that. So it's much more, that's the whole reason of writing, everybody's why JavaScript now? It's because JavaScript gives you the ability to make more impressive user experiences. You can show a little loading symbol when someone clicks something and do AJAX. Can't really do that easily from the perspective of the server. So this supports kind of both. You get the benefits of the server-side rendering, but you get the expressiveness of the client. Cool. And you write it just as a client app, like how you would normally write a jQuery app. You can actually write jQuery apps and use the server-side rendering part of this, and it would work. Single-page jQuery apps. And you can do it with React, but you can't do it with Angular because it uses a funkier stuff going on, and our virtual DOM doesn't support Angular.
So just to build up on his question,
Yeah.
which helps me understand it, if you don't mind. when you went from the home page to the chat page,
Yeah.
we did hit the server, correct?
You're only hitting the server for the chat messages API. You're not actually getting the server-side rendering. All rendering is done on the client. From first page request on, everything happens client-side except for data requests.
Except for the data. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And just to give one point, like one other point of understanding about that is like that fall through local storage that we do, you can't do that on the server. So if you go to the chat messages page and then go off of it and go back, it'll actually show you the last retrieved messages, but in the background it's going to go request any updates and then bring those in and merge those, and the client just responds to any additions or subtractions. That kind of stuff you can't do, or you could do, it'd be like old web form kind of stuff. You do it a crazy way with if you're all writing from the back end. Cool. Okay, so we're going to make two different pages and route between them. Pages are typically represented as custom elements in DoneJS, so we're going to create a chat home custom element and a chat messages custom element, and go back and forth between them as the URL changes. So DoneJS has generators that make these custom elements a little easier to bootstrap, and we call them components. So I'm going to create a home component for the chat homepage.
And what's the reason for the background static?
That's because when I recorded it, it counted my keys, so it's playing weird. I didn't know it actually did that until right now. I have not played through audio.
You want me to mute it? See if I can mute it?
You could try, yeah. Anyway, so this is okay here. I'll pause the video. So this is what that produced, that component file. This is our take on web components. If you might have seen the web component spec, it allows you to define a custom element actually in another element. We do this mostly to show off. We'll see the other way we build other real custom elements most of the time. But this is a nice way of creating very simple, basic custom elements, where it has that element's styles, it has its template, and it had its view model, and it has its view model which controls the behavior of the template. The problem is now I'm not as sure if it's actually playing here. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So we need to create that home page. I don't need the view model. I'm just going to create an H1 that says DoneJS with the image chat, and then make a link that links to the chat messages page. So that's the H1. It says chat. Now I'm going to create the link. And the link I'm going to create in this with this route URL helper. And what this does is says, give me a URL that will set the page property of the application's view model to chat. Right? So that main index.stash has this data it's rendered with. I want it so that it has this page property in its data that is chat. And give me a URL that represents that. And that's what that route URL helper does. And then I'll put in start chat. And now we have a link to our chat page. I'm going to create some styles so it looks right. Okay. So now I'm going to create the chat messages page. That is a more complex custom element. To do that, I'm going to create it in the a modlet format, which is basically a folder with everything that like custom element might need. So I'm going to create this messages folder with basically what was in the component file broken out into individual files. So see here, there's this messages, and it has the view model in messages.js. It has it tests for it, it has documentation for it, and also has the template that is the contents of that custom element. So I'm just going to create a link from the messages page back to the home page with that same route URL helper.
So the chat homepage that you created also has all that stuff that you created.
But it's all in one. It's all in one file, that .component file. Where this has, and this also has tests and a demo page and a lot more to it. This is probably a better way to build things. But when you just have very simple things, it's okay to do it the other
So
way.
you just added, I guess I missed it, you just added the component in a different way.
Yeah, I created a component in a different way.
So you're showing both ways of doing it, basically.
Yeah, I'm showing both ways, right? One way is for very simple components, custom elements, and this way is when you really want to build like your sliders or your widgets that have a lot of functionality. You definitely want to do it this way because there's a test file already written for you. It can documentation in the markdown file. Everything's broken out, so big custom widgets can be hundreds and hundreds of lines long, plus their template, plus whatever else. You want that in its own folder. So this final thing that I'm doing back in the app.js, this is the application's view model. This defines the view model of that index.stash template. It has some default properties that we can ignore here. Really, the big thing I'm doing is setting up the pretty routing rules that map the URL to properties on this application view model. And what this says is when the URL looks like /word, whatever that word is, that is the page property. Set the page property of the view model to whatever that is. And then it says if there is nothing there, the default value of the page property is home. So now with that, we have 2 pages that will set URLs to be setting this page property. Now we need it so when the page property changes, it shows different custom elements. Which I think is the next. There we go. Okay.
Now, is that, those link between pages, are you altering the hash value and the
It changes the URL with push state.
back and
Yeah, it changes the URL with push state.
Or
So it'll make the
actually
URL
just
look
make it
like
slash
chat,
for the homepage.
or it'll actually just make it look like slash for the homepage.
Give me a second. It's the 2 gigabytes there.
Okay. So did the Packers win against the Vikings? I know they're playing.
Against the,
Or who are they playing against the Vikings upcoming?
yeah, we lost against the Vikings, but we
Oh.
won against the
Redskins.
Oh, wow.
not a football fan on this?
I have a 5-month-old baby. I'm actually a decent football fan, but I'm from Chicago, so the Bears are just, huh? Yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna say I've got a kid and I'm done.
You didn't miss much, basically.
All right, so what we're going to do here now is, depending on what the page property of the view model that's used to render this template, we're going to switch which template or which custom element is in the page. But not only that, we're going to progressively load that module and then put it in the page. So here, if the page is chat, I want to progressively load the chat message module's code. And then once that's ready, I want to actually put that chat messages element in the page. So here, I'm using can import, and the inside of that element is rendered with the promise of when that module is resolved. So while that message module is being loaded, we're going to write out loading to the user. This is how you do progressive loading with DoneJS. This is probably, nobody does this the way that we do this. And this to me is one of the cooler things. So once it's done loading that module, we'll just put chat messages in the page. And then if the page is not chat, we're just going to assume for now it's the home page. And as your routing rules get more sophisticated, there's better kind of, there's, I guess, more maintainable ways of articulating all this so you don't have to repeat it. so much. But now we're on the home page. I'm going to progressively load the home module, home component module. And when that is done, I'm going to render the chat home page. Does this make sense? This is crazy to me. How easy it is to progressively load your module and then actually make use of it. You can orchestrate from HTML. And the build system actually identifies these things automatically and will build those bundles for just the home page and just for the messages page. So now, live reload, didn't have to refresh anything. I can go to the page, and now we can link back and forth between two different pages. All right. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to finish the messages page. Messages page should have a list of messages, and you should be able to type a message, hit send, and see that message show up. And we're going to also add the real time as kind of the next step. To actually communicate with data in the service layer, I need a model. So DoneJS comes with its super model, which has real-time behavior baked in, the fall-through caching, things like that. So I'm going to generate a message supermodel. I'm going to give it the URL of my RESTful message service. So I'm just using another, like an externally hosted server. Not going to go into how to build a RESTful service. Mostly because you can build it whatever way you want, and it should work fine with DoneJS. Now here, this is what DoneJS generates when it generates a model. We're a little bit different than maybe if you use Backbone, what Backbone's models look like. We break up. Anybody use Backbone's models here? Cool. So we've broken up traditional modeling into two parts. There's the modeling of your data type, which you see at the top, where it's defining your message. By the way, all ES6 code here, if that's why it looks weird, it's ES6. Defining your type of data you want the raw data to be converted into, that's the first two lines. Here's what an instance looks like, and here's what a list of data looks like. And then you connect that data type to some service layer. It's split out in two because sometimes you might want, like, well, I have a special type, and I might be able to get it from over here, and I might be able to get it from over here sometimes, and you need to be able to separate those out. Inheritance is a bad pattern, basically, for this type of thing, and I think we made it a little bit more complex, but by putting things two places, but I think it's a better solution overall. Now, the final thing you'll notice at the bottom of this, there's this tag, where it says tag message model. That is creating a custom element with hooks into this connection. So we have a custom element that we can use to make requests on behalf of our model, basically. And we'll see what that looks like to load models. And again, to load messages. You don't have to do it via HTML. You can do it programmatically, but we're just kind of showing off the fancier, unique features of DoneJS here. So this is the messages template for the chat messages custom element. And I want to list messages. So I'm going to load the message model, and I'm going to use that custom tag to get a list of messages from the server. And the insides of this element are rendered with the promise that resolves to the list of messages loaded from the server. That class thing is there just for Bootstrap. So here I'm just going to go through, when the promise is resolved, it has a value. I'm going to go through all of each item, each message, and list list the name of the person who sent it and the body of the message. And all these classes are just for Bootstrap, so things look nice. So I'm listing the name of each message and the body. And in case there are no messages, I'll put this else case in there, and I'll just list put like a warning that there are no messages on the server. And because this is a promise, if I wanted, I could do the same is pending, is rejected, is resolved things to hit all of those important states. Like, oh, there was an error from the server. Oh, it's loading, that kind of thing, pretty easily.
What is the get list attribute for?
The get list, that's what's telling it, that's a good question. This is what's telling it what data to pull back. And this says pull back everything. I could put inside here, like, filters, sorting, other whatever information that you want. And those get converted to query strings by default on the AJAX request to the URL that the model uses. But you can, by the way, if you load that model, you can just do .get list on it and programmatically load your data too, like I was saying. Just showing off some of the most unique features of the framework. So with that, I get a list of messages. Okay, now we need to create the form. Is it doing something? I think I had to hit one more time. Okay, so now I need to create the form where we actually can create messages. So I'm going to create a form that has an input for the name and an input for the body and a submit button. And I'm going to kind of set up all the Bootstrap classes and divs so that it's responsive and whatnot. If you've never used Bootstrap, this is what it looks like to use Bootstrap. Just kind of specify the widths of things with the number of columns. Each column has to add up. All these numbers have to add up to 12. But here's the thing that I want to do is I want to connect the value of this input. This is two-way binding. I want to connect its value to the name in the view model for the message view model. And I'm going to do the same thing with the body. I want the second input to two-way bind to the body of the messages body that I'm going to create. Or the view model, I want it to two-way bind to the view model. And we'll see the view model in a second. So this will be setting the name property and the body property on the view model, and then when someone submits this form, I want to call send on the view model. So I'm going to listen to submit and call send on the view model. Now what I need to do is implement that send method that's actually going to send the data to the server. So I'm going to create a send method. Again, this is ES6 syntax. I'm going to prevent the default behavior of events, of course. And now what I need to do is get the message model. So I'll import that module. And here we'll see a little bit of programmatic use of the models. So I'm going to create a new message instance with the name and body property on the view model. So I'm going to read the name, and I'll read the body. And then to actually create it on the server, I call send. That returns a promise that I can wait for when it's resolved. And I'm going to update the view model to say that, hey, remove the body property so that someone can type in another message right away. And that's the view model. And with that, we can create a message on the server.
Who's wrong?
That's my daughter.
Oh, okay.
So I was hoping you would notice something. What's your name?
Me, Mike.
Oh, Mike, not Mike, but behind Mike.
Oh, Josh.
Josh. Something crazy just happened there.
You didn't clear the name?
No, it wasn't that it cleared the name. It did clear the name. This is just the default message. That's what it says, your message. How the heck did that new message show up in the list of messages? Right? If you've ever written client code before, you know that, like, hey, you got to listen to creates and somehow get that new message in your data. We did not do that. There's magic afoot. What that magic is set logic. Like, set logic is in diagrams. And I'm going to explain it in a moment. First, I'm going to set up real-time behavior that also uses the same kind of magic, and then I will actually do my best to explain how this all works. So, to add real-time, I need to, the server is using WebSockets, so I'm going to install Socket.io. You'll notice I'm installing Steel Socket.io. It's just Socket.io, except that it makes sure it doesn't run when server-side rendering is happening, because you don't want to open up a socket and never kill that process that's doing server-side rendering. That would be bad. So we added a special version of Socket.io called Steel Socket.io. And I'm going to import that into my model. Now the important thing here is not necessarily how we're using Socket.io, is that DoneJS doesn't care how you get messages to it. All of this fancy real-time automatic insertion of lists and removal of lists, you can use whatever push technology you want. Just once you do that, you have to call these three methods that we're going to show here. But I'm going to show it with Socket.io. So I've connected to a Socket.io server. This Socket.io server produces messages created, messages updated, and messages removed events whenever those things happen on the server. All I need to do, being a DoneJS front-end engineer, is make sure I call on my message connection, create instance, update instance, and destroy instance, I think is the third one. And however you might get these messages from your server, doesn't matter. You just have to call these methods, and almost all of the real-time behavior of DoneJS will be in effect. And once I've done that, I should be able to open up two browser windows and have them chat with each other. Of course, there's no real tension here because this is a recorded video. But you could pretend like, oh, is it going to work? So, yeah, it will work. Hello from another window. Okay. Cool. So how does this work, right? All we did is just tell a message was created. How is it adding it to that list? So I'm going to do my best to explain with another app that I think, another mental application. Let's say I had a page that I wanted to list new to-dos and assigned to-dos. So how would I write this app? I'd say, hey, connection, get me a list of all type new to-dos. And somewhere else would say, give me a list of all type assigned to-dos. And they would go to the server would send some data back, and they would put that data in the page. Now, behind the scenes, what DoneJS is doing is it has a list store. So it knows what data you've retrieved, and it keeps track of the parameters that you've used to request that data. So it knows, so it does something like, makes a little list store that looks like this. So we know that the user requested everything of type new. So if anything of type new appears, well, we should add it to that list. Same with anything of type assigned. If that appears, add it there. So let's say the server sent us a message. Hey, this instance has been updated, ID 2. With set logic, what we can see is that, okay, well, 2 should be removed. It's no longer new. It is assigned, so we're going to update those lists. And then the page, because of live binding, just automatically updates itself. If that makes sense. So essentially, it's just a trick. We look at the params that you use to request your data, and we make assumptions about those. Now, if those assumptions aren't valid, there's this, you can build your own set algebras, and then pass that to the connection, and then the connection can set up the same behaviors, even if your rules aren't quite the same. And it uses that to do a lot of other crazy performance benefits. Like, let's say one part of the page was requesting all to-dos that were complete and another all incomplete. It can see that those are actually complementary sets and will request all to-dos. And then it will break that up for you. It can do all of that kind of set logic under the hood. So yeah, it moves it, page updates. Okay, so now I'm going to finish the home page. Actually, I'm not, because we're going long, I think, a little bit, right?
Yeah, you're fine.
We're fine? Okay. I've only got 2 more steps, so let's finish the home page then. We just need to add a tabs widget to the home page, and this is just to show off how easy it is to install and use third-party custom elements. Hopefully it's something the designer, I want to get it something the designer could understand. So hey designer, put bit tabs in this page. Okay, they're going to install bit tabs. And hopefully they know somehow. I don't know how good your designers are. Ours are pretty good. This is the template that you need to be messing around in. So they're going to import that module themselves. I think we're going to have a lot of documentation around this part, so the designer can get it. So all you need to do, if you want to use third party, you can just import it with npm. Make sure you actually load the module into whatever template you're using. And then down here, I'm going to actually use bit tabs. I'm using the unstyled version because the styled version by default conflicts with Bootstrap. And here I can just create, I'm going to create a tabs with 2 buttons, one for CanJS, which is the MV star parts of DoneJS, and another for SteelJS, which is like the dependency loader, hot module swapping, server-side rendering, a lot of those things it orchestrates. So their designer, just using pure HTML, added tabs widget and is going to go and change the styles to make sure that there's enough spacing in each of the tab panels or around the paragraphs inside the tab panels. And then, well, they don't even need to reload their page. It just works. Designers love hot module swapping because they're typically just changing CSS anyways. Okay, so now I'm going to build this to production and deploy it to a CDN. Now, if you were to refresh the page, you'll see there's 275 requests with even this small application. That's a lot. Thankfully, hot module swapping means you're not reloading the page over and over and over again. But what we're going to do is build this to Firebase's CDN. So there's a build script that DoneJS comes with, but first I'm going to sign up for Firebase. If you've never done this, it's pretty easy. I'm going to actually show the steps. You don't have to use Firebase, but it is the only CDN that I know that's easily pushable from Node and a free to set up for a small application. So I'm going to create a new application for Firebase called DoneJS Chat JM. And once I have my application container, now I can actually start pushing things to it. What I'm going to do is I need to fill out this part of the package.json. There's a DoneJS deploy configuration you can set up. So I'm going to fill out that configuration. There's other CDNs we support, but as like third-party extensions. I forgot what they are off the top of my head right now. But it's cut and paste. It's kind of, you never code this out yourself. But we'll put Firebase's app here, DoneJS Chat. And we've got to make one other configuration change. We've got to tell our application when it's doing server-side rendering to pretend it's loading from Firebase. So we got to specify the base URL. Just like Require.js has a base URL, essentially we're specifying the same thing, but only when the application is running on the server in production. This is nice so you can coordinate easily between the development mode and production. So with that, I run my build, which does this build that kind of actually identifies, you can see the different pages, modules, and it actually builds out separate modules for those things, or separate bundles. Then I ran DoneJS deploy. Firebase asked me authorize this computer essentially to push, deployed it. Now I'm going to start my DoneJS server, not in development mode, but in production mode, this proxy front-end server, you can see here now we have 9 requests, and they're all loading from Firebase. Right? With an application this small, I probably wouldn't I think this small, it's probably okay to just build everything into one big production file instead of having multiple requests. But you can actually play with that. Steel allows you to specify the depth of scripts you want to load. Maybe you only want to load one script, then it will put everything. Maybe you want any one page to never load more than 3 scripts. You can specify a depth of 3. You can kind of control for it. So yeah, load time went down. Actually, surprisingly went down, considering I was loading from the files. Well, it was more requests. Never mind. Yes, that's really fast load times, considering it is actually loading from the CDN. So I promised one cool 8th step. The final thing that we're going to do is we're going to build this app to iOS and Android application and a desktop application using Cordova and NWJS. So the first thing, if you're on a Mac, you have to install the iOS simulator. Because you actually, well, I didn't trust video enough to every time like bring it out my cell phone and say, hey, look. So this is what you need to actually see it on a computer. And then once you've done that, do I have to hit next again? Nope. You just have to, there's a Cordova generator, so you do DoneJS add, but instead of like component, you say Cordova. This will download that generator and run it, and this will actually rewrite the build script so that it can build to Cordova. And then it'll ask you some questions to kind of fill out. What are you building for? That kind of thing. We're going to say iOS. And then the generator will install some packages, including the Apache Cordova package. If you don't know what Cordova is, it's basically it builds your app so it can load in a web frame as it looks like a executable that you can click and install from the web store. And then it changed our build script so we can just run DoneJS build Cordova now. This will build the app and package it up how Cordova likes it, and then actually launch the iOS simulator. The whole bunch of output. So there's the chat app, there's our browser, and we can have them talk to each other. Cool. All right, so now we want to do the same thing with a desktop app. So I'm going to add NWJS. Someone's working on an Electron plugin, but NWJS, someone merged the bindings of WebKit and Node, so you get both APIs in one platform. So we're going to make a build to that. We actually, Bitovi, we did a project for ShoreTel making their next version of like Skype in NWJS. So you can really build some sophisticated applications with NWJS. So let's just ask some questions. How big do we want our window? What platforms do we want to build to? I'm building because I have a Mac, to a Mac. And this will, again, update the package.json of my application to add dependencies, install them, and rewrite the build script so that all we have to do is run DoneJS build NW. The cool thing about NW is you'll see it actually downloads most of itself the first time you run it, which is really nice. I love that. Because that means if someone else is never doing a build, well, they don't have to download it every time they want to set up a new development environment. Wish everything did that. Anyways, it generated these executables, which I will open. This like the mac.app files. So this opens an executable. And here I can have the we can have them all chat together. The browser, the desktop, and the mobile application. Yeah. So, yeah, yay! So, I mean, that's it. That's why we built it, is because we wanted something where, like, secretly, I wanted something where if I wanted tomorrow to, like, I had a really awesome idea of a startup, and I just wanted to freaking build it all real quick and get it all working everywhere, and just built the right way, I could do that. So yeah, that's DoneJS. We have a comprehensive guide that goes through this is not the whole picture of DoneJS. There's a lot of good things about testing and documentation. This guide walks you through continuous integration and continuous deployment. I'm actually doing a training in Chicago this Sunday for it, which I don't know if anybody wants to drive. It's already full anyways. However, if this is something that you do want to learn, I'm going to do them like on a repeating basis. So you can go to at DoneJS Chicago, and there's another one already not scheduled for a date, but open for enrollment. If that's something you do want to learn and don't mind the drive. Again, we have T-shirts. If you follow us, give us a star on Gitter or on GitHub, or follow us on DoneJS. Any questions?
The NWJS, is that the same tool that the Atom editor is built on?
Is that Electron? I think Atom was built on Electron. And
Can you talk a little bit about NWJS? Or?
I can say that we liked it and we used it. It worked good for us at ShoreTel. If you know, we had to like add some add-ons, some like C libraries we had to build into it, and that wasn't hard to figure out. I mean, I didn't develop C for like 8 years, and it still took me maybe half a day to figure out how to get what's it called? There's an encoding technology we need to bring in for like video streaming. That wasn't hard. So for the most part, it's Node plus DOM APIs, and the Node APIs are really nice. I don't know how to compare it to Electron because I've never built an app with Electron, but it seems Electron is more popular now. It seems like that's where community's going. So someone is working on an Electron version of that generator to make it just as easy to switch to Electron.
Another question. You're using Cordova, so I'm presuming the same app would work on the Android side too?
Yep. Yeah. So just for like full disclosure to people here, with this is a web portal, or it's like it's a web frame, so it's not a true native app like I think Titanium or whatever those kind of things give you. Instead, it opens up a little mini browser in the actual application and runs your app there. So the performance isn't as great as obviously writing native, but if you're writing like line of business apps or like e-commerce sites or things like that, it's good enough, and it's much more cost effective than hiring an Android team and an iOS team to build the same thing and get that to actually all look the same, marketing folks happy. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you letting me come here, talk to you all. Get your t-shirts.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
I think that's it. Next week next month we have REST testing with using multi-rank services. So do that, and of course notes for server. Great.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.